Alright guys, welcome back to another episode of Off Axis Builds. We got a deck repair here on DIY Fridays. This is a roughly about 30 by 16 deck. You can only get away with this repair if your deck is painted. The reason why I say that is because you're going to be tearing up the deck a little bit to get to the screws and pull out the old screws. So the reason why we knew this deck was failing, or not the deck, but the screws are failing, is because a lot of these boards were actually lifting and floating. And we're seeing rust spots all over the place, so that's why we're going ahead and doing this. So what we're going to be doing here today in the next few days is actually digging out the old screws so I can get the rust out and as much screw as I can out. And then we're going to be replacing those screws with a new type of screw. It's actually a deckmate screw, and I'll show you here in a minute. And then once we're done with that, we'll putty in the holes. And that's the reason why I said you can only get away with doing this on a painted deck, is because we're putting putty in the holes. We got to sand it down, and then you can paint over it. When all said and done, it's going to look like a brand new deck. But this will probably last another 5 to 10 years. So by the time your screws start failing like this, the wood is probably going to follow not too far after that. So if you have a stained deck, it's probably best at that point to just pull the screws, replace the boards, and then restain it. But in this case, I'm going to try to get away with making this deck last another 5-10 years, just by replacing the screws and painting it. So let's go ahead and take a look at the process here and show you. I have the deck in multiple stages right now of the process, so we'll go ahead and walk you through that, and then I'll go show you the process of removing a screw and puttying it and then painting it. Alright guys, remember to like, comment, subscribe, and hit that little bell for upcoming notifications. Alright guys. Alright guys, so this is the screw that I'm actually chosen to use on this deck. It's a 3-inch screw made by Deckmate. Biggest thing you gotta look for, doesn't have to be Deckmate, is that it has protective coating on it, okay, and that it actually is made for outdoors. So in this case, these should hold up for another 5-10 years, no problem. Let's see if I can pull one out. What's nice about these screws is they actually go in the deck really easy, because they actually have a little pre-drill on the tip, and then also use a star bit. You don't necessarily have to use a star bit, but that's what I chose. So the person before me actually used a square tip screw, and those are a pain to get out when it's rusted. I'm sure these are a pain too, but I'm not going to have to deal with that. At that point, I'll just rip up the deck and replace the deck. So in order to fill in those holes, I use an all-purpose putty. There's different brands. I chose the Bondo brand. This is for repairs, metal, wood, drywall, concrete, and masonry surfaces. What's most important to see on this stuff is it's designed for interior and exterior use. What that means is that moisture more than likely won't get into it. Now you still could have an issue because this is not going to expand and contract as at the same rate as the wood will, but it will adhere to your wood. And it's better for outdoor use. There are other brands that you don't have to use this Bondo brand, okay? So let's go ahead and walk around the deck and show you the process of what we have here. Alright guys, so this is the deck that I'm repairing. Like I said, it's about a 30 by 16 deck. Okay, so we'll go over the process of what's going on here. As you can see, there's rust stains coming out of some of the screws. You can actually see some of the screw heads bubbling up. Okay, and then coming on over here, you may not be able to hear it, but this board here, look at that. I don't know if you can see that, but it actually, screws have failed on that one where the board's actually moving. So this is what I have left. I have this whole section I've got to pull the screws out. Okay, this is what it's going to look like, and this is the reason why I say you cannot do this when you paint, or excuse me, when you stain a deck. You're going to have these big, massive holes in the wood when you're all said and done that you got to put putty in. I mean, I guess you could do it on a stained deck and get away with it, but it just, in my opinion, won't look good afterwards. Because the correct way to do a stained deck is stop the screw right at the head, right at the top of the wood. Okay, so anyways, that is the second stage. After you pull the screws out, you're gonna put new screws in. You can see I already have a few new ones in there. Third stage, you're gonna putty it. Okay, now this may take 2 times because it will shrink even though it says it doesn't. You're gonna putty in the holes, okay? This is the first step that I've done on the puttying. Coming down this section, I've actually put a second coat of putty in, okay? And I actually have some edge of the woods that are rotting. I'm gonna try to fill that in with the putty and hopefully let that one last a little bit longer. I probably should pull that one and replace it, but we're gonna let it go this time, and if it doesn't last, then I will pull it and I will put a new one in there shortly. But if not, if we can get away with this one, we will. Okay, and then coming on over here, this is what you're going to want your putty to look like when you're all said and done. Nice and smooth. Okay, you're going to want to feather in these edges, feather in those edges, because if you don't, when you paint it, you will see a hard line there and it will look pretty bad. It'll look like you've just put putty down and didn't really care about how it looked. Okay, so here's another few that have been completely sanded down. So those are ready for paint. Okay, so stay tuned, guys. We're gonna get this deck finished up hopefully in the next week or two. This is a long process, so if you're not up for it, you'd rather just replace your deck, go for it. But the reason why we're doing this, because it's roughly about $6,000 to replace this deck, whether it's wood or a new plastic material, and we just weren't up for putting a $6,000 deck down. It could even be more, but that was just a rough estimate without, you know, really digging into it. So there's my cat in the background. You'll probably see him open the door here in a minute. All right, guys, so let's go ahead and show you the tools that I'm using and show you what I'm doing to remove some screws. Putting in the screws, doing the putty, and painting doesn't take all that long. that screw is actually good. Not bad. This screw just felt break. Other half's missing. So that's how most of the screws have been. Now this one I probably could have tightened it down, probably would have held just fine. This one, no way. So that is why I'm replacing these boards, or the screws. So, you're gonna go ahead and dig up the screws. Now, in this case, it looks like they may not have put a screw here. Yeah, did they? No. Alright guys, so at this point you're going to want to put your screw in, okay? Now, here's the situation, guys. You want to try to put it back in the same hole that was there. You can put a new hole, but you're going to be puttying 2 holes. Why do that? Why not try to get back in the same hole that you already have, okay? Don't want to follow the same hole. See that? It just slides right in. You don't want to follow the same hole. You want to go on a different angle, okay? Now, in this case, I have see if you can see that. I have a 4x6 underneath there, so I can go ahead any angle I want, and I'll still hit that 4x6. Okay. Most decks are built with 2x material, either 2x6, 2x4. Okay. Not 2x4. I apologize. 2x6 or 2x8, or even 2x10s. Okay. But in any case, your 2x6 or 2x4 is going to be like this. So you can't go at an angle like that because your screw will be outside the board. You're going to have to go at an angle like this, okay? So in this case, it doesn't matter what direction I go. Main thing is get the screw into that hole and start biting it. If it doesn't bite, you go a little bit deeper, okay? Like the way it is, go ahead and stick another one in straight down. Go ahead. And you're just going to be puttying it. Not a big deal. Like for instance, I'll put one right here. But now I have to putty 2 holes. All right, guys. So, I like to use some sort of plastic, something or other to mix on, okay? Obviously, you gotta open the lid. Okay? And you are gonna scoop a little bit out. This container's almost empty, which is not a big deal. Use it up. You don't want to put too much down because this stuff does harden pretty quick if you're not used to it. Okay? So, what you're going to do is you're going to take the hardener that's provided in the kit. Okay? Usually this is up in the lid on top of the can. If you don't have that, you can get any type of hardener. Okay? They make the red hardener for the normal Bondo, and I believe that'll work for this, not a problem. Just gonna put one little strand across, maybe a little bit more. Okay. about all you need. Okay, at this point you're going to take your mixing tool. Now I know that mixing tool looks pretty dirty. Remember guys, you're not puttying a car. This is wood. Okay, so you want it smooth, but you don't need it perfect. Do you know what I mean? So that being said, if you get little chunks in there, it's just going to sand out. Now if it was a car, I'd make sure this is brand new and there's no opportunity for chunks. Okay, so now you have about 5 minutes to work this. Okay. Alright guys, so let's take a look at some of the screws that I pulled out. Some of them came out nice, no problems at all. Some of them broke right in half. A lot of these, look at this. I would say those failed completely. Today I haven't had to drill out any, but I had to drill out a few of the heads just so I can get the head away from the top of the deck so I can stop the rust from showing up. But I mean, look at this. So that's only doing maybe 20 screws. So you can imagine what the rest of the deck looks like. So we're gonna continue on the rest of this deck and yeah, get this thing finished up. All right guys, so this is the portion of the deck that has completely failed. You'll see it when I walk on it that those boards actually will lift. That's how you know the screws have completely failed in the deck. So let's take a walk over it. So even though they look good on top, there's no rust holes. Those screws are gone. So I'm just gonna dig out what I can and I'll put new screws in there and then see if I can tie it in better in this corner here too. Alright, so that thing is pretty solid now. I'm pretty happy with it. Just got to put some of that filler in and all the screw holes and sand it down, and it's ready for paint. So let's get this thing finished up here, guys. Alright guys, so now that all the putty is on the deck, it's time to sand it down, smooth it out, get it ready for paint. So when you're sanding it, you want to make sure you take off every little bit of flaky paint, okay? You don't need to take all the paint off, just the flaky paint, okay? If you want, you can take all the paint off, that's up to you, but you don't really need to. So you can see I got quite a bit off this edging. Okay, you can see along there, got quite a bit of paint off the corner. So anyways, there's a few types of sanding. Machines you could use. You could use a belt sander, or you could use a palm sander. I'm gonna be actually using them both. This will do your whole job if you wanted to, but it'll take more time. This will strip it down to a good portion, and then you just want to smooth it out with this to get the last little bits of stuff off. So that being said, I'm about halfway done on the sanding, and it's a dusty job, guys. You might want to wear a mask or get a vacuum set up on your sander so it sucks all the dust. I do have a vacuum set up for this guy, but I'm not using it right now only because I'm only using it for this little bits of sanding. I could set it up on this guy, but it's just easier just to go for it. So that's kind of what it would look like before you start, and that's what it's going to kind of look like after you start. You know, you don't want to take it all off because then you're going to have the smooth spot and everything else is going to be rough. Now I am sanding the whole deck, and the reason for that is I want to take off all the flaky stuff. So you can see that there's quite a bit of flaky stuff here and there along each board. So you can even see, like, there's some flaky paint. So you just gotta clean it up the best possible. Clean up all the loose stuff that you possibly can get off, and go from there. So let's keep sanding here, guys. So that's about the speed that it'll be going. Depending on the area you're gonna be working on, require a little bit more sanding, but that's about it. I am gonna go between screws just to kind of clean up those areas, and like I said, to get the least, or not the least, the most amount of loose stuff up. All right, guys, so we got the deck prepped, ready for paint. All the nail holes and screw holes are patched. All the repairs are done. Now it's just got to put the paint on. Now we're gonna put a textured finish on this. So I actually have some old paint that the same color. We're actually gonna go darker, but I'm gonna use the old paint just to fill in all small little voids. We're gonna just go through all the screw holes and just make sure that there's enough paint in those areas. Fill in any voids that I missed with that the Bondo didn't fill. So that's the plan. I just need to get some of the paint, and then we'll start laying it down. So this part, or up to this part, took me quite a bit of hours. To be honest, guys, I would suggest if you're gonna pay a contractor, it's gonna be a lot cheaper just to tear the deck out and replace it. But because I did it, You know, I'm not paying a contractor, so my time's pretty much free. It took me, I want to say, about 4 weekends, about 8 hours each day to get to this point. Now that's removing screws, Bondo, and then sanding the Bondo down. So maybe a few more hours than that, but it came out pretty decent. Now we are gonna go with a darker color, so if any of the screws that I missed or wasn't able to pull all the way out start to rust, the darker color will kind of hide that. Now this color you see here, I believe we did it about 5 years back, so it lasted a good long time. And so anyways, let's get some paint on this. Now we're gonna do the heavy texture, so we're gonna use the Behr deck over heavy texture. Now they make 2 different types. They make smooth and textured. Now if you want to do heavy texture, they recommend using a heavy nap roller. And I'll show you all that once I get the paint. But in any case, we are ready for paint. All right, guys. So one thing that's you probably want to do is you might want to get some primer and just go over the Bondo, or if you have some extra paint, put the extra paint over the Bondo. The reason why I say that is because the Bondo will soak up the paint, and if you're only planning on putting 1 coat, you will see the Bondo. No matter how much you sand it, you will see it because it actually soaks in the paint. Now if you put 2 coats, it'll hide it, but being that I'm gonna put, like I said, spread that last half a can of paint that I have out, it'll fill in a lot of the Bondo areas that I've done. So like that area over there, actually, for some reason they did a little access hole there, and when they did the patch in, they didn't fill it very nice. So I sanded it down pretty decent on this side and added Bondo on this side to make up for that little lip. Though, I mean, I could have left it, but since I was doing the Bondo, I went ahead and continued with trying to smooth it out and make it look good. So, all right, guys. I'm going through and filling all the little holes, like that one right there. That's got 1 coat in it. I probably need to put a second in that hole just because it's a little deeper. But I'm going to fill in all the holes and cracks. If there was a crack on this board, you can see as it comes out, there's the crack. So I'm filling those all the way across the whole deck, filling in any voids that I have on the Bondo areas, and gonna let that dry for about an hour, and then I'll start the deck over paint on the whole deck. So stay tuned for that one, guys. It's a long process, but you do it right, it'll last at least 4 to 5 years. Alright guys, so it's time to get started on painting the deck. Like I said, we went with the textured deck over paint. You can go with a normal roller if you're just wanting to put texture down. If you want to go extra texture, they recommend getting this plastic roller. Okay, it's actually called extra textured deck over roller. That's really cool. It's plastic, so it's probably really easy to clean. I've never actually used one of these, but it's probably really easy to clean. It is made by Behr. Okay, so just go ahead and put that on like a regular old roller. Okay. A couple other things you need. Obviously, it's probably good to have a scraper with you, just so you can scrape up any loose paint as you go if you need to. Just a cheap old paintbrush, because you're probably going to be throwing it away afterwards. And then maybe a small little roller just to get in the tight little areas. Okay. Always good to get one of these plastic covers so you're not ruining your metal bin. Okay. The other thing, maybe some towels of some sort. Okay. And one other thing I want to show you guys. You don't want to spend the money on paintbrush extension. Okay? Most rooms actually have the same threads as your paintbrush. So if you just take the handle off, you thread it right into the tip. So now you're not bending over all day. Paint the whole deck that way if you want. Probably good for the main sections. But when you get down to the details, you're going to want to, obviously get in there. So, some gloves are probably good. Doesn't matter what type you have. Obviously, start with some coffee. Wake yourself up, guys. All right, so we've prepared the deck. I've already done all the little holes and cracks that I want to fill. So now we're ready for the first coat of paint. I went ahead and let that other coat dry for about an hour, mainly just get it down to where you can walk on it and it's not tacky anymore. Maybe an hour or two depending on your temperature. So we're going to put the first coat on, let that fully dry for about 3 hours. I am going to start that timer from when I start rolling. The reason for that is because 3 hours from that point, you'll finish the deck and then you'll be able to start it again. If you wait till you finish the deck and do your 3 hours, that's fine too. You can do that. Just the project's going to take a lot longer. Okay, probably take about another 2 hours longer than it should have. So what we're going to do now, crack open the 5-gallon pail. I got 5 gallons for this. I did it recently and we went with 2 gallons of the other deck over paint. Just wasn't enough, so I went ahead and got another 2 gallons on top of that. So about 4 to 5 gallons is about what you need. So let's go ahead and get started, guys. Alright guys, so we're gonna go ahead and start in the corner. You're gonna want to work from your corner out so you don't get yourself painted into a corner. So we're gonna start there, work our way. Now, I'm gonna actually Alright guys, so one thing I forgot to mention, it's good to have a sheetrock knife so you can cut in along the building. You can take all that off if you want, but this will make it a whole lot easier. So all you're gonna do Alright guys, thanks for joining me on this DIY Friday deck repair. Took me about, I want to say 8 weekends to do, roughly about 4 to 6 hours a day. Just picking out those screws and replacing those screws was the hardest part. But all in all, it turned out really nice. I'm really happy with it. So I expect it to last another 4 to 5 years as is, and then probably the whole deck will have to be replaced at that point. But in any case, it got me a few more years out of it. And anyways, thanks guys for watching. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and hit that little bell at the bottom for upcoming notifications. Alright guys, remember, it's built, not bought. Alright.